I read that message 3 times. The screen light was the only thing illuminating the kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, and I was standing there in my socks on the cold tile floor, holding my phone like it might say something different if I just kept staring at it. Before you look at the photos I'm sending over, please call me first. Don't show anyone. Daniel Reeves, Reeves Photography. I set the phone face down on the counter. Then I picked it back up. Then I set it down again. My husband was in the next room. I could hear the television. I could hear him laughing at something. And I just stood there in the kitchen, in the house we had moved into 4 months ago, in the town where I'd grown up, thinking, whatever is in those photos, my life is about to be different. My name is Claire. I'm a firefighter. I've been with Station 14 in Clarksburg, West Virginia for 6 years, and before that I spent 2 years as a volunteer with my hometown department starting at 19. I've walked into burning buildings, I've carried people out over my shoulder, I've held the hand of a man I didn't know while we waited for the paramedics, and I told him his name out loud over and over so he knew someone was there. I am not someone who falls apart easily. But standing in that kitchen, I felt something shift under my feet that had nothing to do with fire. Let me back up. I married my husband. I'll call him my husband for now because that's what he was, 10 months ago, on a Saturday in October, at a small vineyard outside of town that my mother had found and fallen in love with the moment she saw it. The leaves were turning. The light that afternoon was the kind of gold that doesn't look real, the kind you only see maybe 3 or 4 times in your life and you spend the rest of your life trying to describe to people. 62 guests. My sister is maid of honor. 3 of my crew from Station 14 in the front row, in their dress uniforms, because they had asked if they could, and I had cried a little when they asked. It was the best day of my life. I was completely certain of that. We had hired Daniel Reeves because one of the other women at the station had used him for her wedding 2 years before, and she showed me the album, and I called him that same afternoon. He was in his late 50s, quiet, patient, the kind of photographer who seemed to disappear into a room. You'd forget he was there, and then later you'd see a photo he took of a moment you didn't even know anyone had noticed, and you'd think, how did he see that? He had been editing the full gallery and was a few weeks behind because of a family situation. That was fine, we weren't in a rush. I had already seen the preview set he'd sent. 30 images, the best of the best, the ones that were going to go on the wall and in the album, and they were beautiful. I had looked at them so many times the files were probably worn out. So when his message came at 10:47 on a Tuesday night, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting anything from him at all. We'd had one brief email exchange 2 weeks earlier about timeline, and that was it. Before you look at the photos I'm sending over, please call me first. I called him the next morning, early, sitting in my car in the station parking lot before my shift. He answered on the second ring. "Claire," he said. "Thank you for calling." His voice was careful, not cold, but careful, the way someone's voice gets when they've rehearsed what they're going to say and they're hoping the rehearsal holds. "I found something," he said, "in the full gallery. While I was culling and editing, there are over 2,000 frames from your wedding day, and I found something that I don't think you know about, and I've been sitting with this for 3 days trying to decide what to do." I didn't say anything. I was watching a sparrow on the hood of the car in front of mine. It hopped once, twice, then flew away. "I'm going to send you a series of images," he said. 15 frames, and I want you to be somewhere private when you look at them, and I want you to be somewhere private when you look at them, and I want you to know that I'm sorry. I genuinely am. And if you want to call me back after, I'll answer, any time." "Daniel," I said, "what did you find?" "I'll let the pictures tell you," he said. "That's better coming from what you see than from what I describe. But Claire, I want you to know that I've shot over 200 weddings, and I've never made a call like this. Not once." The images came through while I was still sitting in the parking lot. I almost didn't open them. I sat there for 4 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on my dashboard without meaning to, and then I opened them. The first one was taken during the cocktail hour. In the background, half obscured by a pillar, my husband was standing very close to a woman I recognized. Her name was Jess. She had been his co-worker for 2 years. I had met her twice, briefly, at work events. She was in the background of a lot of our wedding photos because she was a guest. Because I had said yes when he asked if she could be included on the list. In the first photo, they were just standing close. Too close, maybe. But I told myself, it's a party. It's crowded. It's nothing. The second photo was taken 6 minutes later, according to the timestamp. Same pillar. His hand was at the small of her back. The third photo. His head was bent toward hers. She was looking up at him. The fourth photo was the one that made me stop breathing for a moment. He was looking at her the way I had always believed he looked only at me. I put my phone in my bag. I got out of the car. I walked into Station 14 and I did my job for 10 hours, because that is what I know how to do. I answered calls. I did equipment checks. I ate lunch with my crew and I laughed at something somebody said, and I don't remember what it was. I was present and I was professional, and I was completely hollow underneath all of it, like a building that looks fine from the outside and you have no idea the structure is gone. That night, I waited until my husband was asleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and I looked at all 15 photos in order. Slowly, the way you look at something when you're trying to make absolutely sure you're seeing what you think you're seeing and not what fear is making you see, and not what fear is making you see. I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. I looked up Jess. I looked through her social media, which was mostly private, but her profile photo had changed 3 months before our wedding. There was nothing there that proved anything. There was also nothing there that made me feel better. I went to bed at 2 in the morning, and I lay next to my husband in the dark, and I listened to him breathe, and I tried to remember who I was before this night. The next day, I called my mother, not to tell her everything. Not yet. I called her because hearing her voice has been, my whole life, the thing that stops me from going somewhere I can't come back from. She doesn't even have to say anything particular. It's just her voice, the specific sound of it, the way she says my name. "How are you doing, sweetheart?" "I'm okay," I said. And I almost believed it for the length of that phone call. Here is what I did not do. I did not confront my husband immediately. I did not call Jess. I did not go looking for more evidence in his phone or his email or his jacket pockets. I had been through enough difficult situations in my work to know that acting before you understand the full picture is how you make a bad situation worse. I had seen it. I knew it in my bones. What I did instead was think. I thought about our relationship from the beginning, 2 years before the wedding. I thought about the patterns I had accepted as just part of who he was. The nights he came home late with explanations that were always reasonable, always just slightly too detailed. The way his phone was always face down. The business trip to Columbus 8 months before we got married. The one where he seemed distracted for a week before he left and relieved when he got back. And I had thought it was work stress and told myself I understood. 8 months before the wedding. I picked up my phone and I texted Daniel Reeves. I looked at the photos. "Thank you for sending them." "Can we meet?" He replied within minutes. Named the time and place. We met at a diner outside of town 2 days later. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a coffee in front of him and his hands wrapped around the mug like he needed something to hold. I sat down across from him. "I want to ask you something," I said, "and I want you to just answer honestly." "Of course. Why did you send those to me? You could have just not included them in the final gallery. You could have deleted them. Nobody would have known. Why did you tell me?" He looked at me for a moment. "My daughter is a paramedic," he said. "She's been working out of a station in Pittsburgh for 4 years. And when she told me she was going into emergency services, I was scared, because that's a hard life. But she told me something that stayed with me. She said the job teaches you that people deserve the truth about what's happening to them, even when the truth is hard, especially then." I didn't say anything. "You're a firefighter," he said. "You put on that gear and you walk in. You deserve to know what you're walking into." I drove home from that diner on back roads that wound through the hills I had grown up in, past the farm where my grandfather had lived, past the elementary school, past the cemetery where my father was buried. I drove slowly. I wasn't in a hurry to get anywhere. That week was the longest week I can remember. I went to work. I came home. I watched my husband move through our house, making dinner, watching television, asking me how my day was, and I answered him, and I looked at him, and I tried to reconcile the person in front of me with the person in those photographs. I kept coming back to the same question, the one I couldn't answer yet. Did I want to know more, or did I already know enough? On Thursday evening, 2 of my crew came over. Technically, it was to help me figure out why the back porch light kept flickering, because that's the kind of thing you call your coworkers for when you work at a fire station, and half of them are better at electrical than most electricians. But we ended up sitting on that porch for 2 hours after the light was fixed, and at some point I told them, not everything. Enough. My crewmate set down her beer. "Claire," she said, "whatever you decide to do, you're not going through it alone. You understand that." The other one just nodded. That was it. No long speech, no list of advice, just that. I cannot explain to you how much it meant. On Saturday, I asked my husband if we could talk. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd sat with my laptop looking at those 15 photographs, and I put my phone down between us with one of the images on the screen. His face, when he saw it, was its own kind of answer. There was no confusion. There was no instant denial. There was a silence that lasted several seconds, and in that silence I understood everything I still needed to understand. What followed was a conversation I'm not going to give you every detail of, because some things belong to the people who were in the room. What I will tell you is that it was honest. Finally, completely honest, probably for the first time in longer than I wanted to know. And in that honesty, there was something strange. Not relief exactly, but the specific feeling of solid ground after a long time walking on something that only seemed solid. He had been in contact with Jess for 14 months. He said it had ended before the wedding. He said he had convinced himself that made it something other than what it was. I heard him. I let him finish. And then I said, "I need you to leave for a while. I need time." He left that night to stay with his brother. The house was very quiet. I called my mother at 9 o'clock. This time, I told her everything. There was a long pause on her end when I finished. And then she said something I have thought about almost every day since. She said, "Claire, you have been walking into burning buildings since you were 19 years old. You have never once walked away from something hard just because it was hard. Whatever comes next, you are going to walk through it the same way you walk through everything. I have never in my life doubted that about you." I didn't say anything for a moment. "Mom," I said, "I really needed to hear that." "I know," she said. "That's why I said it." The weeks that followed were not easy, and I'm not going to tell you they were. There were mornings I drove to work and the drive felt like it took everything I had. There were nights the house felt too large and too silent, and I sat on the back porch in the cold because being outside was better than being inside with my own thoughts. There were moments when I thought about the October light at that vineyard and it felt like something that had happened to someone else. But here is what I also discovered in those weeks. I was not alone. My crew checked on me in the way that people check on each other at firehouses, which is not with a lot of words, but with presence. Someone always seemed to show up right when I needed them to, with coffee, or a bad joke, or just a willingness to sit nearby without requiring anything from me. My sister drove 3 hours to spend the weekend. My mother called every single day. And Daniel Reeves sent me a short email about a month after our diner meeting, just to ask how I was doing. I wrote back and told him. He replied, "I'm glad you're standing. Take care of yourself." I've thought a lot about what it means to be shown the truth by a stranger. To have someone who owed you nothing look at what they found and decide that you deserve to know. Daniel didn't have to do that. He could have made the easy choice and no one would have blamed him. But he made the harder one because he thought I deserved the harder one. Because he believed I could handle it. I think about his daughter, the paramedic in Pittsburgh. I think about what she told him. People deserve the truth about what's happening to them. I have told that to my crew. I have thought about it on calls when someone is scared and asking what's going on, and the easiest thing would be a reassuring half-truth. People deserve to know what they're walking into. It's been 7 months since that night I stood in the kitchen reading his text message. My husband and I are no longer together. That decision came gradually and then clearly, and when it came I knew it was right. I am not angry in the way I expected to be. I am something quieter than angry, something more like clear. Last month, I helped organize a fundraiser for a local organization that supports first responders going through personal crises, divorce, loss, the particular kind of weight that accumulates in this work. We raised more than we expected. My captain said she'd never seen the crew move that fast for anything that didn't involve a 4-alarm fire. I stood at the edge of the parking lot at the end of the night, watching everyone, my people, my crew, and I thought about that October afternoon and the gold light and the 62 guests and the version of the future I thought I was walking into. And then I thought about the kitchen and the cold tile floor and the message I read 3 times, and I thought, I would rather know. I will always rather know. There is something my father used to say when I was small. He said that the people who are worth keeping in your life are the ones who tell you the truth when it costs them something to do it. He said most people will tell you what you want to hear because it's free. The truth has a price. Pay attention to who pays it for you. Daniel Reeves paid it for you. Daniel Reeves paid it. My mother pays it every day just by being honest and steady and present. My crew pays it by showing up. I am 31 years old and my life looks nothing like I thought it would look 7 months ago, and I'm going to be honest with you. Some days that is still hard. Some days I drive past the road that leads to that vineyard and I feel something in my chest that doesn't have an easy name. But I know who I am. I know the people who are standing beside me. I know what I'm walking toward and what I've already walked through. That's enough. For now, that's more than enough. If you're watching this and something in this story sounds familiar, if you're standing in your own kitchen at 11 o'clock at night reading a message you didn't expect and feeling the floor shift under your feet, I want you to hear this. You are not alone. The truth is always better than the comfortable lie. And you are stronger than whatever you're standing in front of right now. I know because someone once believed that about me before I believed it about myself. And it turned out he was right.